God's Day, and welcome to my Season 7 special guest interviewee for the month of April 2025, Delores DeDe Barocco. Once again, I've had to pivot and change my plans to find an alternate for my cousin Keith and his wife, who unfortunately suffered a stroke on the day before we were scheduled to record their interview. Please know that they've been in my prayers to God for her speedy recovery and for him to give my cousin everything he'll need for whatever comes his way. And they'll be back in my rotation, scheduled as soon as Michelle is up to do her interview to give her personal testimony to show how God brought her through her heart attack, as many don't live to tell their story. But also, and godincidentally, on last month, while with my other family at the Christian Writers Group meeting, my friend DeDe asked me how things were going with this podcast. And I responded that my April special guest wouldn't be able to do their interview after all because my cousin's wife had experienced a stroke. And to my surprise, after DeDe gave me her heartfelt sentiments, being the sweet and kind-hearted person she is, she told me that she would do it. Wow, guys, I was both shocked and surprised that she volunteered so quickly, but I am grateful that she did do it. Guys, I am both shocked and surprised that she volunteered so quickly, but quickly is going to be the word I hold on to, as I've been hearing that word a lot when tuning into my different gospel channels and the videos that I watch. Quickly. And my word of the year is intentional, as I've been hearing both words a lot. As often as these types of things only happen to me, seemingly only happen to me, and I'm quite sure others, although I haven't met anyone just yet like me, whose life is filled with odd, rare, and unique moments or experiences in their lives. But in many cases, my life, something bad almost always happens, always seems to be lurking behind every sunny day. But God always has his way of turning those would-be messes into my messages. And once again, thanks be to God. So with that being said, his way of turning things, thanks be to God. So with that being said, Delores DeDe Barocco, how are you really doing today?
Well, hello, and I am so happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share my book, or about my book, to your audience and to you, Renisa, because it is something that it is setting me free. Today, I feel the freedom to share my testimonies in this book, that I really feel free. Because of writing the book, I have freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful to be here today, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Yes. So I'm excited about our interview today.
Thank you for chiming in, because I was just talking when you asked how my podcast was going. I wasn't saying that to try to get you to be a guest, but when you asked, I was like, yeah.
Can I tell you, though, that is a divine appointment?
Exactly. I couldn't believe it. I was like flabbergasted. It was like, what? I was just talking. I wasn't asking you, and you said, I'll do it. It's like, okay.
But it's God, because I have not talked about the book. I've been writing for over a decade now, off and on for a decade. And so life is happening, in that I just was called to write the book. God called me to write it.
Yeah.
And of course I was obedient to the call, because I was like, Lord, not me. No, not me. I'm not good at spelling. I'm not good at, a lot of things.
We come up with all kind of excuses to wiggle our way out of doing what he wanted us to do.
But you know what I realized was that, I'm sorry, there's a call coming in on my line.
Okay.
one of the things that I realize is that when you are obedient to the call, then God will supply everything that you need.
Exactly.
You just have to be a willing vessel that He wants to use.
Yep.
For your testimony to be shared.
Exactly.
And once I agreed to it, okay, Lord, I agreed to do this, but you're going to have to help me because I can't do it in my own strength. I can't do it on my own.
Yep.
And He said He would supply everything that I needed. And He has. So thank you, Lord, for that. That we're not alone, that He helps us through the difficulties. When we feel inadequate. His grace is sufficient.
And people don't realize that enough. It's like God knows whether you share it with Him or not. He's just waiting for you to acknowledge it and let Him know that He knows. But if you don't say anything, closed mouths don't get fed. So you have to say something. He's waiting. It's like, all right, somebody is you may see somebody on the well, I hate to say that because they have people begging on the corner that don't they're millionaires undercover begging on the corner. But no, I was gonna say closed mouths don't get fed. Let's just keep that in mind.
And also that we all have a story.
Yep.
And God allows things to happen
for a reason.
To build character in us.
Yes.
Because if everything was great, we wouldn't need God.
No.
So these trials help us
become the person.
Others.
Yes, become the person He created you to be.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trials build your character and muscle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also helps us to have integrity.
Exactly.
Because we've been there. We've experienced things. And we can talk about our experiences.
Exactly.
And how God brought us through those experiences.
Yeah. And this platform is available for people to share what they've gone through and to give people hope. And so they can be like, oh, well, she went through cancer. Well, I can get through it. Or she went through a brain stroke. I can get through it. Or she went through molestation. Oh, I can get through it. So it's like a lot of, I want my platform to be a place for people to come and get hope. I want my platform, God gave me this platform, and I want to use it to uplift His kingdom. So, and that's my part. I feel like I was called to do from the very beginning.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And so this is my first interview of sharing my story, my book, with you and with your audience for the first time. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it in this way. This setting is perfect for me.
Yeah.
Because I am a shy person. Naturally, I am a shy person.
See, I know that.
Showing me
so that's why a lot of people
I have to be stretched, and do things that I'm not real comfortable with doing.
Exactly. And some people have asked me, why are my guests audio only with the photo? And I'm like, so you could put the voice with the face, but them not necessarily being on camera. Because this allows you to move around. You can do other stuff while you're talking. And we don't see any of that. We just looking at a picture on the screen. Yeah. But it allows you the freedom. And if you, like you say, you shy. I'm a shy person. Most people don't think it, but I am. But it helps shy people, and they're more apt to talk if they don't have to show their face. Yeah. So it's like, it's putting everybody at ease. And if you had something to do, you could still be in your house. Because even my pastor, I interviewed him and his wife, Teresa, last year in February. And it was after church, so they were at home doing whatever they do on Sundays to prepare for the upcoming week, that next week. So, and they was, tag teaming. He'd talk, he'd answer a question, and then she'd come back in the room and she'd answer a question, and they take turns. And it works. So, they gave me a picture, and I'm like, okay, so now that's why I do it. I asked everybody for a nice photo, and I put that up there. So regardless of what they saying, nobody can see what's going on in the background. So you ain't got to worry about how your house look, and everybody's looking at the picture.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing.
Exactly.
It's more of a convenience for everyone.
Exactly. And that's why God gave that to me.
Well, and also, you have a voice. You've given us a voice.
Yes.
And I appreciate that so much.
Yep.
And for those of us who are shy, who are, get nervous behind a camera or something, this is preparation.
Yes.
This is a time of preparation.
Yes.
Like I said before, God said he will supply everything we need. So if you share, I'm sharing with you today about the book.
Yes.
And I am on audio, which I am more comfortable with.
Yes.
Because I'm sharing these things that are dear to my heart. And they're very personal things that, I'm going to be sharing. And the first time to have this opportunity to share and not be, with a camera in my face, just slowly working myself up to other things, other opportunities later. But this is the beginning and my first step.
Yep, baby
sharing
steps.
What I wrote.
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because my cousin Ty, I had asked her when I first started my podcast back in 2023 in September if she'd be a guest on my podcast, and she had said no, and she's camera shy. But when she found out her sister was my first guest, then her other sister was my second guest, then I had Josh from Life Songs, where I volunteer, and they're my podcast sponsor. Every December, I have one of the DJs or people that work up at Life Songs. They're my guest hosts for December. And after she saw that they were supplying pictures and all she had to do was talk, oh, sister, she sent me that picture real quick. And me and her had one of the best interviews ever because she has a story. She has Crohn's disease.
Okay.
Yes, and a lot of people aren't familiar with that. That's like something new. So it's like, we need your story out there. That way it'll bring more people in and they'll know your story. And it helps with me having that picture, because she was like, oh, okay, so all I have to do is give you a picture and I just have to talk? I'm like, I can do that. I'm like, okay. And I know, me being a shy person myself, I know how it feels to be a shy person and not wanting to be on camera, paranoid about how you look, how the background look. If you give me a picture, I just post it up there so we just hear your voice. Yeah. So it don't matter what's going on in the background, what kind of facial expressions you make, you free to be you. Just talk.
Well, what you were saying about the woman that has the Crohn's disease.
Yeah, my cousin.
It helps other people out there that are dealing with that issue as well.
Yeah.
Want to let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
There are other people that are dealing with this as well.
Yeah.
So it's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And you have a health issue that I wanted you to talk about too, but let me pray us in.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this month's podcast interview with yet another of my Christian family. DeDe, help us engage in this meaningful discussion. Allow it to fall on fertile ground. We know that this is your desire that no one live in darkness and perish. We also know that you desire that no one excuse me. We also know that your desire that no one live in darkness and perish. We also know that your desire is that no one, but instead come into the kingdom through light and knowledge, and allow the Holy Spirit to release on us as they listen to the word spoken in this interview and see the light. Allow them to see that in spite of problems and troubles that we all often face in this world, there is no reason to stop believing, praying, and casting all of our cares on you. You love on those who are blinded in any way and open their eyes that they may see things as they really are in this fallen world. Give us the right words to say to capture people's attention, and I pray that they are led to share this episode with whoever they believe could also benefit from something they learned or was amused by, our own version of edutainment, to be both educated and entertained. These are our prayers through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen.
So, DeDe, how are you really doing today?
Well, I am free, and writing the book has made me understand freedom, in that I have shared and wrote about my life story. This is a nonfiction book about my life and sharing things that were very dear to me, and just really being able to talk about it, not from being a victim of things, but victorious.
Exactly.
Overcoming adversity.
Yep.
Throughout the book. So I am thankful, and grateful to you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about it for the very first time. So my book, would you like me to go ahead and get started?
Yes, start with
the book starts. Okay. So my book begins with an extraordinary day. So this extraordinary day is it was supposed to, start off as an ordinary day, and it ended up being an extraordinary day because of something that happened to me, which was devastating in that day. And so as I go on in the story, that is the beginning of how it starts. And I'm going to go back to that a little bit later in our interview here today, but I wanted to also let you know that it goes back in time, and we rewind the clock to where it all begins, and that is in the trail of my childhood. Yeah. So the book is on its way. It's actually being edited at the moment, a final edit before it actually goes to the publisher.
Do you have a title yet?
The book is called The Trail She Left Behind. And so the trail of my childhood, as we rewind the clock back to when my parents first met, when I was a child. And so my parents met each other in California, and they were out one evening, and they were both in the bar, and they caught each other's eye because they were both wearing the same outfits, same colors outfits, which brought their attention to one another. They were black pants, a white shirt, and a red sweater. Wow. And they were the only ones in that bar that were dressed that way. Wow. And so they caught each other's eye, and it was like instant, attraction. Yep. And started up a conversation. And so they, from that day on, were dating and were married 6 months later. Wow. So they fell head over heels in love with one another. And my mom was older than my father.
How much older?
7 years older.
That's not that bad. I'm 11 years older than my husband.
Well, but also, so there's a little story that goes on a little further here, but while they were dating, my mother said that she would like to introduce my dad to Sonny, and she wanted to introduce her to her siblings, her 4 siblings. And so my mom, who was a more mature woman, she had been married twice. Wow. And had yielded 4 children.
2 from each marriage.
So when she met my father, she introduced her children as her siblings.
But he didn't think that was weird that she introduced him to her siblings and not her parents?
Well, she introduced them to her siblings at first. And so they, just like I said, fell head over heels in love, got married. And so before they got married, there were 2 little secrets that each one of them had. They had a secret, each one of them, to share with one another. Once they realized they were in love and they were getting married and going to spend the rest of their lives together. My mom had to tell my dad that those 4 siblings are actually her children. And my dad was going to go to jail for a year for a crime that his friend committed But he was there when the police came, and it was a robbery. And his being a friend to one of his best friends, he took the rap for the friend.
Wow.
So my dad knew that his friend could not handle being locked up, so he agreed to go to jail for that year.
Now that's a friend.
Yes. And so he was loyal.
So that shows what kind of man he was.
Yeah. So when they got married, he told her that he was going to have to go away for a year. And that's when she came clean too, with her little secret as well with the children. But it didn't matter. He loved her, and he was honored to take on her children and marry her.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's in this story in the book, and it's in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm giving you a summary of what happened and how it began. So as we go on, the story begins with also my grandmother and my mom were very close, and my dad and my mom lived in a house on the property in the front of her property, and my grandmother and my two uncles lived in the back house. Mm-hmm. But my grandmother didn't drive. So one evening, before that happened, my dad, I'll just say that this story happened before the story I'm beginning to tell you about. Yeah. My dad, who was, married to my mom with 4 children. Well, they ended up having, she was pregnant and had twins. Mm-hmm. So I have twin brothers from my mother and my dad's union.
Wow.
And so the twin brothers were born. And so my dad was having financial problems at the time, and he had issues with his car, the brakes on the car. And he went to my grandfather to ask for a loan to fix the brakes. Mm-hmm. And at that time, my grandfather told my dad that you are responsible, and you need to take care of your responsibility. Wow. Now, my dad, went to him because he didn't have the money. Mm-hmm. And so when my grandfather was trying to teach him a lesson that you wanted to marry and take on this responsibility, so now you take care of your responsibilities. Yeah. Now, he was trying to teach him a lesson, but at what cost?
Exactly.
Okay? Then we're going to find out later. So as the next week or so, my mom and my dad got a call from my grandmother to come and pick her up from work. And so in California, my mother and my dad went to go pick up my grandmother after work. And on the way home, there was an accident. And my dad avoided, from my mother telling me this story, that my dad avoided a head-on collision. And the car hit them on my dad's side of the car. Wow. So the car, they missed the initial head-on collision, but it did hit their car. And so it was in the 60s, 1963.
So cars were heavy then.
Yes. And he was driving. Mm-hmm. And so mother, and this is after they had picked my grandmother up. So my mother and my grandmother, back in the 60s, people didn't wear seatbelts.
No. Cars, did they have seatbelts in cars in the 60s?
I don't know that if they did or not, but they were not wearing them.
Because I was born in 68, and I remember my dad saying that I always loved KFC chicken. And he'd take me to go get fried chicken, and I'd have 2 drumsticks, one in each hand, and I'd stand up next to him, eating one with my arm around his neck, holding the other one in the other hand. So I don't know if they had seatbelts in cars then.
Maybe not. They weren't wearing them, I know that. And so my mother and my grandmother were flown out of the car.
Wow.
My mother, my mother's injuries were that she had a broken pelvis and a concussion. Now, also, I forgot to mention that they were pregnant again for me. I was in my mother's womb at the time of this accident. And so when my mother flew out of the car, she had a broken pelvis and a concussion. My grandmother, her injuries were a few broken ribs, and then she had a concussion, but her concussion was a major concussion because all of her brain went to one side of her head.
Oh, wow.
So it was a brain trauma, a brain injury to my grandmother. And so, but in the accident, my father, when the car flipped over, it landed on his chest. It took flight, and it landed on his chest. And so my dad laid in the street with the vehicle laying on top of him, and he yelled out to my mother, Delores, help me. Please help me. I can't breathe. As she, told me this story over and over and over again in my childhood.
That's, hold on. How young were you? I mean, how old were you when she started telling you this?
When I was a little girl.
Little, like how old?
Little as in little, like a baby, I guess 4 or 5 years old, 3 or 4 years old. Because he also mentioned to my mom that he loved the movie, and she knew this. He loved the movie Spartacus.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a visionary. Mm-hmm. He said to her that he would love to have a little girl with green eyes and a brunette named Verenia after the movie Spartacus.
Wow.
Kirk Douglas and what was her name? Jean Collins, mm-hmm. I believe was the actress's name, who was Verenia in the movie Spartacus. Wow. He loved that movie, and he used to cry when he would watch the movie. So he was very emotional. But anyway, so
not a sensitive guy.
He already saw it because when I was born, I was a green-eyed brunette named. My middle name is Verenia.
Ooh.
So he got his wish. Well, I'm going ahead of myself. So my dad laid in the street with mm-hmm. that vehicle on top of his chest. So wow. My mother and my grandmother arrived at the hospital. And when my dad arrived, upon his arrival, shortly after he arrived, he was pronounced dead.
Wow.
So I never met my father. He was killed in that car accident. So the trajectory of my family changed in an instant that day. So
that's heavy.
Yes. And my mom was left a widow with 6 children and 1 in her womb on the way.
Wow.
So shortly after, I was born 5 months later, and I was a green-eyed brunette, and they named me Verenia. So,
wow.
Yes, my dad got his wish. And that was what my mother would tell me. My dad got his wish. And as a little girl, I would hear her say that, and it just resonated in me differently. Like, there's something not quite right with that statement to me. And part of it was my mom regretted the fact that she lived on that day. She would have rather been, with him till death do them part.
Wow.
But he was the one, her beloved, passed away that day. So it was heavy, the burden that she had to carry at that point, knowing, that she lived and that she would have to endure that responsibility and, with taking care of the children and providing for the children.
Yeah.
All of it.
Wow.
And so she and my grandmother at that day, were like inseparable. So my grandmother helped my mother raise us.
Okay.
And I think they both had survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
In knowing.
I wonder if they ever talked about it. You ever hear them?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
No, they did?
Oh, yes. Very much so. Yeah, they bonded in that way, the tragedy.
Yeah.
And the grief of that loss. And, of course, they knew that my grandfather denied him the money to fix that things could have changed, could have been different. So at what cost, to teach a lesson to my grandfather, son, the number one thing is that they only had one car, and they had children, and my grandmother, my mother, everybody in that car.
Yeah.
So
it was a lot of running.
Yes. So, and I'm sure, that it affected both sides of the family. My mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family.
I wonder if his dad ever had guilt over saying no.
Of course. I'm sure that was, on his heart and on his mind.
Wow.
That he had to ask for forgiveness,
for turning his son, turning his
son down.
Yeah.
When he had the money.
And he was the oldest child, right?
He was the oldest son, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So, but that is something that we all should learn from, at what cost do we teach these lessons in life?
Because you never know.
Yeah, it's life and death.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a life and death matter situation, and in this case, it was.
Wow.
So they had to live with that, and so we are, having to live through this tragedy, and my family, my older siblings had to. They felt it the most because they were affected, because they knew my dad.
Yeah.
And they loved him.
Yeah.
And then he was taken from them as well. And so they had to help, raise us because of my mom needed the help.
Wow.
And so we had these little babies.
So wait. So the grandparents didn't even send money to help?
Well, the grandparents were involved somewhat. But my mom and my grandmother, I had a grandmother there that was living with us. So we were taken care of by her. And they contributed what they could, my grandfather and my grandmother. But they were devastated. They lost their son. So it affected both sides of the family.
But I mean financially.
Well, they, were, again, I don't know. I wasn't a part of that situation.
Okay.
And so I can't give you all the details there.
And kids didn't.
I will say that we were provided for. God took care of us.
Yeah. I was going to say, and kids, that was grown folks' business. Kids wasn't in grown folks' business like they are now.
Well, my siblings had to forego their childhood.
Yeah.
When tragedy strikes, it's nobody's fault.
No.
It's just, life happening.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say the trajectory of our life, our family life, changed at moment.
Wow.
When that accident happened. And they didn't sign up for that, but they had to be responsible to help take care of us because my mother was not able to.
Yeah. She
was grieving, and she also had to heal and give birth with a broken pelvis.
Because she was, how far along was she when the wreck happened?
She was 4.5, 5 months. I was born 5 months later.
And her pelvis hadn't healed yet?
Well, she had a broken pelvis. I don't know how long it takes for a broken pelvis to heal.
Ooh.
Her body's changing and expanding.
Yeah.
Because she's pregnant. And her body's, her stomach's growing, the baby's growing inside her womb. So that's painful.
Yeah.
So she endured that and gave birth to me 5 months later. So we were there in California, and we moved from Inglewood, California to Porterville, California.
Uh-huh.
And that was more of the country. It was a slower pace. And by the way, my father was an athlete in high school, and he became a boxer. I forgot to mention that. His name was Sonny Starr. He was a boxer. That sounds
like a boxer. Was Sonny his real name?
He was a fighter. Yeah, he was a fighter.
Wow.
Of his life, when his life was taken from him in that accident.
Wow. And
so my mom used to make his boxing trunks and robe.
So he had a body.
Yeah. 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 So to see that body laying there lifeless.
Wow.
Was devastating. That vision, her remembering him that way.
Mm-hmm.
She probably remembered that till the day she passed, and flashbacks of that.
Yeah.
But I just thank God that he did spare my mother and my grandmother. And I think that she should have embraced the fact that she lived.
Exactly. And not what she lost. I mean, what she lost was a big deal, but why did God choose her to live? God don't make mistakes.
And the baby in the womb.
Exactly. was fine. She could have lost you. She was 4 months pregnant.
Well, and she got... my dad got his wish. The green-eyed brunette baby named Berenia. He got his wish.
Wow.
And that just pierced my heart when I hear her say that.
Mm-hmm.
But her saying it towards me, telling me that he got his wish, not got our wish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was something that I didn't understand at the time what I was hearing, but it pricked my spirit in a way that something wasn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom never got to bond with me when I was a baby because she was healing from the tragedy.
Wow.
Healing from her grief and depression.
Yeah.
From the accident.
And she was medicated.
And medicated, heavily medicated, yes.
Wow.
So we did know there was, that side of the, just healing from all of that. I didn't know my mother before the accident, but the older siblings shared stories, how she was vibrant and loving and very much active and just really beautiful.
Wow.
And after the accident, a part of her died in that accident.
Wow.
So, and the mother that we had after the accident was different than the mother they knew. So we'll go on from here to, let's see, where my upbringing after childhood.
What about the baby goat?
Oh, yes. So we moved to
Porterville,
California.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where I had a baby, it was a lamb called Poji, who was like my baby. They put Poji in a playpen so I could feed Poji with a Coke bottle full of milk. And it was a little lamb that didn't have a mom, so I fed her and played with her and took her for walks on a leash. My twin brothers, my mom and I, that was our pet.
Wow.
And I took pictures with her. And so that little lamb was like me, the little baby.
Yeah.
That needed nurturing and to be cared for. Yeah. And so God gave me Poji, a gift, a little lamb. So I love that. And we ended up moving from Porterville, California.
What happened to
Louisiana.
What happened to Poji?
Poji was left on the farm, and I believe a family friend took over it was like a little farm.
Okay.
Because we had other animals on the farm as well.
Okay.
And so she stayed there in Porterville, California.
Okay.
We came to Louisiana, and my mom had family here. That's how we ended up moving back here. In fact, my mom met my dad in California on a trip. She was visiting.
Oh.
So we didn't live there at the time.
So wait, was her kids with her then?
What's that?
Was the older kids with her then when she was visiting?
Yeah. No, she wasn't. She was there by herself visiting. Then they moved to California. When they got married, they moved and lived in California. And I was born in California. My twin brothers were born in California.
Okay, so they all lived here first.
Yes.
And then they moved to California.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And so then we moved back home. My mom's family, there was some family here in Louisiana, so we came back to Louisiana.
Okay.
And yes, we lived in Lakeview area of Louisiana.
Okay.
Right off of Boulevard.
Okay.
So we went to my brothers and I went to a Catholic school for elementary for a year or two, and then we went to public school after that. And so we went to public school in Metairie, and that's where I met some of my friends in the neighborhood, and I had Cheryl and Phyllis were my friends through elementary and middle school. So we were in Metairie, moved to Metairie after we lived in Lakeview for a while, and then we moved to Metairie. I had older siblings that moved with us. The oldest one moved to Texas.
Okay.
The daughter moved to Texas. And so we all lived here and kind of grew up together up until my teenage, early, like 11, 12 years old.
Okay.
But before I go into that, I just wanted to let you know that during the time we were in California, there was someone very close, someone in the family that was very close to my family that knew about the tragedy, knew about the 7 children. My mom left a widow.
Wow.
So this person he was molesting me.
Oh, wow.
As a child, which, we were like the 7 sheep.
Yeah.
This person would come, and this person had a rage of anger and throw temper tantrums, and we witnessed it. And so he lured the little lamb, which was me, away from the flock of 6 other children. And he would pounce on me in molesting me. And
but not intercourse.
What's that?
Not intercourse.
No, molestation.
Touching.
Yes. And so after he finished the dirty deed or whatever, he then would put back on his sheep clothes. The wolf would come out in him.
Wow.
And he would do, things to me. And then he would go back to the flock of 6 and act like nothing happened. And, that wolf would show up at opportune times where he would single me out away from the others.
Yeah, because he knew he couldn't do it with your brothers and sisters around. He didn't want an audience.
Right. And so we loved and trusted him, and he was a family member. And no one knew about this because of the fear that I saw, the anger and the rage and the temper tantrums with this man that, the enemy used him to destroy me. I didn't die in the accident.
Yeah.
So, the enemy was trying to break my spirit as a child.
And like, I'm going to get you one way or the other.
Well, the Bible says we have an enemy out there.
Yes, roaring around like a...
kill and destroy our lives.
Yes.
And so this person was attempting to destroy my life. And this is the method in which he used, which is a weakness in his heart, where the enemy had a door open, I guess, in the area. And the weakness, and he gave into the weakness. And so he did what he did. And I didn't understand. I was confused. What's going on? This person's supposed to love us and take care of us and protect us. But he began to be a perpetrator.
Wow.
Instead of the person that everyone thought that he was a beloved family member that we can trust. Only, it was designed to break me, my spirit. Anyway, so that continued for several years.
Wow.
And he would find opportune times to isolate me away from everyone else. And to the point where he would say that, his wife could not, if you take one of the children, then you take them all.
Wow.
If she had to go on errands and stuff, so that I would be left behind.
How many kids did they have?
2.
Okay.
And so I would be left behind. And then, he would send everybody out to play except for me. And then he would, do things that I knew in my heart or in my stomach. I knew there was a sense of right and wrong.
Yes.
As I got older, that there's something wrong. That, and then I would be keeping this a secret. It was our little secret, which, was holding back, telling anybody for fear of what he would do to the person that he was with. It was in my family, and also to our family.
See, this is sickening. It's like if anybody...
Fear was in me.
if anybody says this is our little secret and it has something to do that you don't feel, it's something they doing to you that you don't feel comfortable with, you need to speak out and tell somebody. It ain't no secret. Nobody's gonna ask you to keep something that is not, that's okay with everybody else, a secret. They're doing something to you that's not, that they don't want everybody else to know.
Exactly.
So by all means, if anybody ever says this is our little secret, no, you need to tell somebody. Tell another family member, tell a teacher, tell somebody, because they're not telling you that so it'll be your little secret because they're doing something good to you. They're doing something dirty that they don't want everybody else to know. So
exactly. And the thing is, everybody is so busy doing chores and doing things that they don't even realize what's happening.
Yeah, well,
that I'm being lured away from them.
Yeah, and you said your older siblings were already...
They were busy.
Okay, so...
They were busy helping my mom take care of the house, take care of chores.
Oh, wow. So they weren't going.
Things. They were busy. And in the meantime, this person took advantage of the opportunities when he had that opportunity.
Yes, and you were going...
Nobody even knew.
And you were going with all your younger brothers.
Yes.
The twins.
Yes.
And your younger brothers that your mom had.
Yes.
See, he knew what he was doing.
Yes. And so, that was something that happened, and my innocence was stolen.
Wow.
So I realized, at that point, that this cannot go on. Like, this is, I'm starting to get older, and in my growing up, in my childhood, I remember, that my mom taking us and my grandmother taking us to church. We were going to a Catholic church on Sunday, and there was confession. And I remember, that I had that relationship with my religion, growing up. I had it was tradition. I would pray and ask God. I would pray to my Heavenly Father. I was thinking at the time that it was my father who had passed away. But I learned that it was God that I was praying to. And that, all of those things that I was being brought up and learning, right and wrong. Wow. I had conviction in my own heart that I got to tell someone, or I got to, let my mom know what's going on here. This is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't until one day when I was in the bathtub with my little sister, when we came back to Louisiana, my mom had a relationship with a seaman, Marty, who was my stepfather, really, because it's the only father figure I knew, but it was her. She never married him. It was her boyfriend. And one of the things I forgot to mention was my mom and my dad made a commitment when they married that they would never, if anything happened to them, either one of them, that they would never remarry.
So do you think that's why she didn't marry your little sister's dad? Wow.
Never remarried. And she would never change her name.
So Barocco is that your maiden name, or is that your married name?
It's my married name.
Okay.
Rios is my maiden name.
Rios.
Yes.
Okay.
So her name was Delores Rios.
Okay.
And she never remarried and never changed her name.
Wow.
So when he passed away, my mom, when we moved back to Louisiana, she met Marty, and they conceived a child, which is my little sister. She's 4 years younger than me. Because my mom trips back and forth to Louisiana before we moved back home. And that's what ended up bringing us back to Louisiana, is that Marty and my mom met, and they were together.
Okay.
But she never married him.
Okay.
And she had a daughter named Lisa, who is 4 years younger than me.
Okay.
Okay, so one day Lisa and I were in the bathtub together and getting ready for bed, and we were taking our shower when the perpetrator came into the bathroom. One of the things is we never could lock the door. We had one bathroom to all siblings in the house.
Wow.
And so when we would go take a shower or a bath or whatever, we'd pull the curtain and we'd unlock the door. The door would not be locked because if somebody had to use the bathroom, they were able to go in there and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Perpetrator came in and he took me out of the shower or the tub, bubble bath that we were in.
Wow.
And began to try to molest me right there with my sister right behind the curtain.
Wow. Talk about bold. How old was she then?
She was a child, so she's 4 years younger than me. I was probably, at that point, 7 or 8 years old.
So she was 4 or 3?
She was 3.
Wow.
3. So she was playing in the tub, and at that point, this was my David and Goliath story here, where I felt in my gut to say no. And when I said no, this person stopped in his tracks.
Wow.
And he ran out of the bathroom. And from that point on, it never happened again.
Well, good for you for standing up to the devil.
I was facing the giant.
You ain't lying.
Tell the adult no.
Exactly.
Those words.
And he ran out of the bathroom.
It was no, and I said, no, stop. And he stopped.
Wow.
And ran out of there.
Wow. Like I say, he knew he was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And for him to ask you to keep that's going to be y'all little secret. No, that's a little dirty secret.
Yes.
Because he know people look at him differently if he was doing that and other people knew about it. And
yes. Well, that's the thing. To everybody else, he was great. He was wonderful.
Yeah. That's how
of not having a father in the home, not having, you know what I'm saying, having someone to fight for me or rescue me.
Exactly.
Because the older siblings, in fact, I remember as I started writing the book and telling my story, my brother, one of the twins, came in the bathroom one time when he was in there with me, and he thought to himself that it was inappropriate for an adult to be in there with a child.
Oh, wow.
But he turned around and walked out and never said anything to anybody.
Wow.
So when that came out, he started crying in front of me, saying, I'm so sorry, DeDe, I'm so sorry.
Wow.
I didn't know. So, yes, it affects everybody.
So, hold on. This here, hold on. Now, I know when kids go in the restroom, you tell them not to lock the door. And especially since it was so many kids and that was the only bathroom in the house, I know that's why y'all had to keep it open. But you mean when he came in there, his big grown behind didn't lock the door?
That's correct.
He was asking to get caught.
God wanted it to be exposed.
Yeah, exactly. And it was.
But that time when my brother walked in wasn't the last time.
So how many years was that? I mean, how long, what's the time span between your David and Goliath moment and when your brother came in?
No, my brother came in before the divine.
Okay.
That David and Goliath.
Yes. So that was the finale.
That was the finale.
Okay.
That was it. Yeah.
Wow.
But my brother didn't tell me this until we were adults, and I let him read some of my book that I wrote, and that's when it hit him. He remembered that incident.
That's bold, though.
He started to cry, like, oh, God, I could have helped you. I didn't know. Because in that story, I was like, no one came to rescue me while this was happening. It's happening underneath everybody's nose.
Exactly.
I mean, it was in the house. It was happening.
In y'all's house.
So, yeah, people were home. That's how bold this person was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not at his house, at your house.
Well, it was there too. It was both.
So you guys were living with him?
No, it was happening.
Oh, it happened at both houses.
Yeah, it was happening wherever he was. Yeah.
Sick.
He was part of the family.
So is he still living?
So, no. No.
But like I say,
he never came to me and never said anything about what he did. And,
don't worry. God got your back. God sits high, But he sees low.
But I also walked in forgiveness and showed love, even to the unlovable.
Yeah.
Because of what he did, I knew God, I had to ask God to forgive me as well, for holding this in and not saying anything. That, I was, violated, and I was innocent, and I got my innocence taken from me at a young age.
Wow.
And so what, shame and guilt, I had to live with that. And for not speaking out, and I think it's important to note that when something like that happens, that the child is, the person who is innocent in that, and they need to have a voice, and they need to be able to go to someone and share with what's going on. And when we had a dysfunctional family because of the accident, a lot of us were, they were traumatized because they had so much responsibility thrown at them all at once. And a mom who was not quite with us, she had taken medication and stuff to deal and cope with her grief. So there was a lot going on in our household. And so we didn't get like professional help, when tragedy strikes a family. You go in counseling or whatever. We didn't have all of that.
And that was frowned upon by people like now. Because actually, I'm about to start going to therapy because I have a lot of issues from my childhood that I've been carrying on. It's like I have a lot of layers. I'm an onion that needs to be peeled. So I'm about to start therapy on this coming Wednesday. And I'm excited because I have a lot. And I had a choice out of doing virtual or in person. I say, no, I want to do in person. So have a lot of tissues there because I'm a crier. But it's like, I told her have the tissues there and I'll be there waiting. So, and she'll be there waiting. But no, when you got counseling back then, it was frowned upon, even by some people now. For you to say you seeking counseling or you going to a counseling, they like, what you going to counseling for? Counselors are made by God. God, just like when the Israelites came out of Egypt, and they were stressing Moses out by going to talk to him about so many different issues. And God said, no, Moses' father-in-law told him, look, you need to appoint people for them to go and speak to, and they can handle them issues because you're trying to do too much. And that's what they did. So the people you go and talk to are God ordained. And I asked for a Christian counselor because I know I don't want no just regular everyday. I don't care what the ratings are. I want a Christian person, or at least somebody that I can relate to on a Christian level, because the world and Christians, that's like night and day. So I want somebody who's going to understand where I come from. I don't care what their scores are. Because you know how the hospitals have you rate the doctors and give them. I mean, no. I don't want to go by the worldly standards. Give me a Christian person. Because I want them to be able to relate to me and my issues on a Christian level and guide me on a Christian level.
I was going to say, yes, with wisdom.
Yes, with wisdom.
Supernatural wisdom that comes from God.
With biblical wisdom.
Yes. And God knows, your heart.
Yes.
So he knows what you need.
Yes.
And in having, did your research and finding a Christian counselor. They know where you are spiritually speaking.
Exactly.
Because it's the spirit that is wounded and abused. So in that, I want to just share with you my thoughts where, in the book, I talk about looking inward at myself. Would they believe me if I told them? Would my family be at risk? Would my mom, would the children be taken away from her? Which would be devastating because she has a frail emotion. Right now, she's very frail in her emotions. So she can't handle anything else.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why I didn't say anything.
Wow.
And then I failed third grade miserably because I could not focus. I was dealing with, when I get home, the fear. Will he be there?
Yeah.
Am I going to be molested today? You know, all of these things, these thoughts were coming in my mind. And I'm thinking, the counselors, you know, at school, if I talk to them, would they be able to help me? Well, they might, you know, if I tell them, which I can't tell them anything because my family would be at risk of being taken away from, you know, my mother, and then she would have a breakdown or whatever. So it was just a vicious cycle in my thinking. There's no way out. I have to deal with this. And the only way to deal with it is to give it to God.
Wow.
Because I am too young to deal with this stuff, you know, what's happening at home. But I knew enough to protect my family. I knew enough to say, okay, I'm going to keep this.
Yeah.
I kept asking myself, should I talk or not?
Yeah.
And I believe that I did the right thing in holding it in.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
And would they believe me or not? Oh, no. You know, would they believe the story, you know, that this happened? Because they loved the person.
Yeah.
So all of those thoughts.
Yeah, because that's a lot of times when a kid does come out and tell, if it's somebody, especially if he's Mr. Rico Suave, and they'll be like, oh, no, he ain't did that, or unless you tell them specifically what he's doing, they'll be like, oh, he was just playing. You know how he is.
Right.
No. So, yeah, it could have turned back, it could have backfired on you if you were, and if you would have told the teachers or something, like you say, with your mom being in a fragile state, and y'all having a dysfunctional household, it's a possibility that y'all could have been taken away from her.
Yeah. I convinced myself just to keep it, you know.
Yeah.
Keep it to myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, stay safe by making the sacrifice for my family. I did.
But that's a lot for a child to go for. How old were you what time period? How old were you the whole time you were? Up to what age? When did the molestation start?
It was young. I mean, I was a child.
Like how young?
5, 6. And it went on for years after, until I said no.
And that was at 7.
It was 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
3 or 4. I'd have to go back to the book.
So you must have been like 3 years old when this started.
No, well, you know, again, I was a child, so what was appropriate and inappropriate, I didn't know. At that
exactly.
Time. Your baby.
You were a toddler.
So how long it was going on before I actually realized that it was going on? Because what does a child know? That's confusing to a
exactly.
child. You don't know what's being done and what's happening, if that is.
And you don't know what's appropriate or not.
You know, if it's real or not.
Because you depend on adults to teach you what's right and wrong.
Right. Well, that's another thing you brought up, because we had no leadership.
Yeah.
In our household, really. Kids raising kids.
Huh.
You know,
and your
mom,
older siblings didn't know.
She was there, but she was sedated and taking medication, and we knew my mom, you know, was there. My grandmother was there.
Yeah.
So we could, you know, we definitely had them,
wow.
but they were not real healthy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They were still recovering.
Huh.
And it took years for that to, you know, for them to recover, and they never really recovered from it, to be honest.
And for I'm just thinking, I had, you know, I had my brain stroke when I delivered my baby girl, and I'm thinking about the pain that I went through, because I told myself, because my not daughter-in-law, but my son's ex-girlfriend has 2 babies that she had all natural, and they were big babies. So I was like, okay, well, this is my last baby. I'm going to go out with a bang. I'm going to have my daughter, Michelle, all natural. So I went through the whole pregnancy. Again, I'm going to have a natural birth, and it's going to be all good. And I wanted to experience that, because I had never had, out of all 4 of my kids, I had never had a natural, out of my 3, I had never had a natural birth. I always had, my first one was an emergency C-section, because I had contracted a infection in my placenta. How that happened, I have no idea.
Oh my goodness.
But and then my second one, my son, was a VBAC, vaginal after cesarean, and so was my daughter, my third daughter, my second daughter. She was a VBAC as well. But so Zon was gonna be I wanted just to experience what it feels like. But when I went into labor and them pains started hitting me, I changed my mind. I was like, can I have an epidural? And they was like, well, we have to check you. When they checked me, they told me it was too late. I was like, oh my God. So I got to experience pushing an 8-pound, 3-ounce baby out all natural without, even though I had changed my mind, because they said since she was crying. On the way to the hospital, I could feel her coming out. So I had to. So be careful what you ask for, ladies, because you just might get it.
Yes. But praise God, you had the delivery. You got to experience it.
Yeah.
Even though it was difficult, you got through. God brought you through.
Yes, He did.
But have that beautiful baby now to love and cherish and see grow up.
Yes. Yes.
So that's a blessing.
Yeah.
And God answered your prayer. You wanted to have it natural, and you had it.
Yeah, but I didn't. I guess God no take backs. You asked for this, you gonna get it.
He gives you your heart's desire.
Exactly. If that's what you really want, you sure you really want that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
He sent that my way, and I got exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Yes, and that is a blessing to give birth and to have a child, and to we're to take care of them, to respect that's a gift from God.
Yeah, it is. Children are a gift from God, but at the same time, I didn't realize that the headaches that I had been suffering with since I was in 3rd grade was the cause of it was an aneurysm. I had been born with a birth defect, a rare, unknown, and genetic birth defect that had ran in our family for generations, as far back as my grandmother's mom. So my great-grandmother and her sisters and an uncle, a couple of cousins, all died from strokes. But back then, when you died from a stroke, they didn't know it was different kinds of strokes. They just wrote stroke on the death certificate and filed it and buried you. Now they know the difference. It's a dry stroke and a wet stroke. I had a wet stroke because I had a brain bleed.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. That's serious.
Yep.
But they didn't know it right away, right?
No, no, and I even complained because I felt a pop in my, I don't know whether I felt it or I heard a pop in my head when I was pushing her out. Yes. And then I just started hearing, I thought it was water. And I was like, I keep hearing water, because I remember even when I was released from the hospital, now it was a few days before I was released because my pressure was up. And now looking back, that's why it was up. My aneurysm had burst, and there was blood rushing in my head. The water that I was hearing was not water. It was blood, my own blood, rushing and filling up my skull.
Wow.
So it's
a miracle.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And even more miraculous is that I had the brain stroke I had it when I pushed Zon out. But I was rushed to the hospital with it on her actual due date, December 8th. She came early on the 1st. Now, if that ain't God, 7 days later, I had her, big, healthy baby. I was trying to enjoy, because this is my husband's only child and first child. I was trying to be happy with him and so, but my head was literally killing me. And in the hospital, all they give you is Tylenol. And that was doing nothing. It was like me just popping candy.
Yeah, that headache wasn't going away.
No, and it was throbbing.
Yes. Oh,
So
wow.
believe me, when I was released, we went straight to the CVS across the street from the Oshna main campus, and got me some Advil and Excedrin migraine, and I started popping them at home. And I tried to breastfeed in the hospital because that was something else that my son's girlfriend was doing, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't take it because it was like when she latched on, it was like I had a sharp pain in my head and in my boob at the same time, and I just couldn't take it. So I told Alex, I said, you're going to have to go and get some formula. I can't breastfeed no more.
Yeah, you were suffering through that.
Yes.
Too much.
Yes. So it was a lot, but thank God, thanks be to God.
Your body was letting you know.
Exactly.
Wrong.
Exactly. Yep. But I was trying to push through it because I'm that get it done girl.
Look how God created our body. The red flags were there.
Exactly.
That something's not quite right.
Uh-huh.
And you knew it.
Yep.
And he provided a way, to find out what's really going on there.
Yeah. And look here, over 14 and a half years later, look what I'm doing now.
I know it. And again, yeah, he used it.
Yes, because I even interviewed the doctor who actually did my emergency surgery.
Wow.
Dr. Lucian Moran. He was the neurosurgeon on staff that day.
Praise God, he was there.
Because I asked him, how did you know it was a stroke? And he said, well, there's different signs to look out for. Wet strokes are usually caused by bleeds. That's what you had because of the extra blood that I was carrying, because I had just gave birth 7 days before. That was definitely a wet stroke. Whereas the strokes that other people have are dry strokes because of they smoking or bad diet or other reasons, stress, because of that. Mine was a wet stroke because of the extra blood and the birth defect. So, yeah.
But God, huh?
Yes, but God. I'm a generational curse breaker. Because by me having that, my mom came down to see about me. And when she went back to Houston, she went and found a neurologist to test her. And she has one too. But she never had headaches like I did. She used to tell me that was my bad eyes. Because I had just started wearing glasses.
You just didn't know.
No. And then my cousin, I have a younger cousin, and she grew up, and I knew about her having headaches. And I was like, you know what, Keisha? You need to go have that check. You got insurance, go get you a neurologist and go have yourself tested. And I told her about my mom having one, and she went and got tested. Guess what? She's the happy recipient of one too. Wow. But now both of them are able to be monitored by their neurologists, whereas I was just flying blind.
Well, and that's the thing. God allowed that to happen so you could expose what's really going on in your family.
Exactly. And not just in my family, but I want to be
in others.
I want to be an advocate for everybody. I want to let them know that if you suffer with headaches, go have it checked, especially if it runs in your family and you have a family history of deaths from strokes. Now they know it's a different kind of stroke. Like I say, it's a wet stroke and a dry stroke. And go and have yourself checked because you may be walking around with a ticking time bomb in your head like I was. Yep. Yeah. So, okay, we can get back to your interview. Sorry, I had to go. I had to do a rant.
You're good. That's awesome. No, you share. That is something. You have an incredible testimony.
Yes,
too.
I do.
We all, like I said, we all have stories and things that God has brought us through.
Yes, we do.
We give Him glory by sharing what He has done.
Exactly.
And allowing us to walk through there so that we can be, informative and experiences, so other people who may be through it now can take a look at that and have wisdom in approaching it that way. Yeah. Like, I want to know why this is happening. It's a red flag. Don't ignore it. The red flag. So that's a good thing. And you have done, an amazing job as far as using this opportunity to help others, to have a voice. And be able to share their testimonies. So that's a blessing in all of that. You have the compassion and the the understanding that this is important stuff here that we're dealing with. Life and death.
Literally, life and death. Yeah. But I've always been compassionate. I mean, my mom, they used to always bug her. Because I'd cry at the drop of a dime, or I'd walk in somewhere and I'd be like, why is those people looking at me? And she's like, ain't nobody looking at you, Ree. And I'm like, now looking back, it's like they were looking at me. I'm the light.
Yeah.
Darkness was attracted to the light.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so where do we leave off?
Well, okay, so I was talking about coming back to Louisiana and going to a Catholic church. I think that's how I realized right and wrong. And like God gave me the courage to speak out, and I did. When I, said no, stop. This is where the faith overcame the fear that day. Yeah. So I spoke, and that adult listened to the authority of God as I spoke those words. Yeah. So we know now, okay, so that's one of the things I'm grateful to God for having faith in as a child to be able to say those words and have power behind those words. Yes. And that's only because of God. Yeah. So I love that, as I started growing up, I knew right from wrong. I started to learn those things, even though not necessarily being taught those kind of things. You learn it, and I did by experience.
That's the best teacher.
Because we were forced to grow up beyond our years. Yeah. Living a difficult life at home. Yeah. And knowing what we all went through, right? This is something that is, you just wonder how other families get through these things if there's no God. Yeah. We did have some foundation, of God in our lives. Yeah. And then I would go and visit with friends and kind of hang out with my girlfriends, Phyllis and Cheryl, my childhood friends, and their brother Brian. And we had another friend in the neighborhood. His name was Carl. And I remember, they were just hanging out. The brothers were just hanging out together, and they were, cursing and drinking and smoking and just being
doing boys, what they thought
boy
was
stuff.
Cool teenage boy stuff.
Yeah. They were older than we were. And they were just listening to music and stuff, and we were looking at them and just kind of hanging out together as we did. But I remember not seeing Carl come around for a little while, and I was asking, where's Carl? I haven't seen Carl around. And no one knew what had happened to Carl. Finally, suddenly he showed up, and it was a different Carl. And so he was driving a bus, and he was asking us if we wanted to go to church with him on a Wednesday night. And I said, Carl, DeDe, you want to come to church? And I said, well, Carl, I go to church. I go to a church. And he was like, well, I want to invite you to the youth group at this Baptist church that I'm going to. Yeah. And I'll come and pick you up. You don't even have to worry about getting a ride there. I'll come and get you. And I was like, oh, Carl, no, I think I just keep on going to my church, but I appreciate you asking. Yeah. And so he kept coming around and kept pursuing all the kids in the neighborhood to come to church. And so one day when he asked me, it dawned on me, okay, so what if I say yes? Let me just go and take his, invitation, and just go see what's going on. Yeah. And
curiosity killed the cat.
Well, I was curious because I saw a difference in him. I saw him. I didn't know at the time. Yeah. But he was a different person. Yeah. Like, he wasn't drinking, he wasn't smoking, he wasn't cursing like he used to. Yeah. So what changed him?
Yeah. You wanted to see what was the cause of that change.
Yes. And so when I got that invite and I went to that church, I met Jesus.
Yeah.
First time. They were people in the church that were hands were lifted, they were praising God and singing hymns, and it was like you felt in the atmosphere there was something going on.
Yeah.
God was moving in the atmosphere. And his presence, you felt it. I felt it. The conviction, the things that I was carrying when I surrendered it to God and just, Lord, I receive you. You know, my Lord and Savior. The tears were just flowing down my face. Now I was probably 12 maybe at time.
Yeah.
Going into my teenage years.
Yeah.
When I gave my heart to the Lord. And to me, that was the very first time.
Yeah.
And I met Jesus that day.
You say Carl was driving a bus. Carl was driving the church van or the bus.
The church bus. It was a short bus.
Not a city bus.
Right. It wasn't a city bus and it wasn't a long school
You
bus.
say Carl was coming by driving a bus. It's like, verify. What kind of bus?
Right. It was the church bus.
Yeah.
It had the church's name on it.
The van.
The van.
Yeah.
But it was the color of a bus. It looked like a regular bus, but it was shorter.
Yeah.
You know, smaller. And so he drove around the bus. I mean, the neighborhood, and everybody saw him. A lot of children went to church with him.
Yeah.
It was his ministry.
Yeah.
And so I was so thankful to him for inviting. And that not only did I get saved and come to know the Lord that day and every day after that, it was like I was growing in my walk with the Lord and reading the Bible for the first time and learning, you know, that God said it. It's his word.
Yeah.
I believe it, and that settled it for me. Like, I'm okay with, what God says, you know.
Because y'all don't have Bibles in Catholic Church, huh? The priest just reads the Bible.
The priest reads, yes.
So this was was that your first time reading the Bible yourself?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I had a Bible, and I started to read the Bible. They gave us a Bible. The church gave us a Bible. For our age, you know, it was a youth group, so it was young people, you know, young Bibles for young Christians, and started to read it. And so my mom saw the change in me. My grandmother saw the change in me. You know, they were definitely Catholic, and they did the sign of the cross when we passed the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
They would go in to confession, and they would go to church services, and you know, bring us to Sunday school and all of that. So when we were little, as I got older, when I started going to the Baptist church, they saw a difference in us.
Yeah. And
that we loved going to church. And so my mom and my grandmother, some of my brothers, got saved at that church.
Oh, wow. That's big.
And they knew they were Catholic, but they wanted to make sure that they were saved.
Yep.
That they knew Jesus as their Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
And they got baptized as well. We all got baptized. And my grandmother,
isn't that something?
Who was precious. My grandmother told the minister at the time, when she was getting ready to be baptized, my grandmother had a little heart condition, so she had a pacemaker, where they put the pacemaker in her chest. And when she went into the little pool area to get baptized, before the pastor, you know, put her under, like submerged her underwater, she said, grabbed her chest, and she says, well, she had palpitations, like, you know, her heart was beating really fast. And she was, will this affect my pacemaker? If I go under the water, will it affect my pacemaker? As innocence would have it, her innocence, our naivety, however you say it.
Naivety,
was so innocent.
Like a child.
Like a child, because she felt the heart beating so fast.
Wow.
Of what she was getting ready to do. And that was the Holy Spirit all over her.
Yeah.
Her face was glowing. She had just received Jesus as her Lord and Savior and said, and confessed that I want to get baptized. I want to get baptized. I know I was baptized as a child, but I want to do this. I want to do this. So she was submerged underwater and came back up, and a new creation in Christ.
Wow.
And so I saw and I witnessed that. My mom, my grandmother, myself, my brothers, I had 2 brothers, the twin brothers, get baptized as well. And just thanking God because of all we had been through as a family. Starting to see something that's real, something really that's tangible that we can hold on to help us through the difficult things that we're walking through as a family, right? And pull us all together and bind us to Him, to Christ, knowing Him and growing, in our walk, in our faith walk.
Wow.
So that was powerful. And I was so grateful to Carl as he introduced us, that day.
Yeah. Carl in that little van, church van.
Yeah.
That was his ministry. Bringing the children in.
And there were a lot of children in the area.
Yeah.
That got saved.
Yeah. And that was his calling on his life.
Yeah.
To get that van and go hang out in the neighborhood where he knew a lot of kids that were lost and needed to be saved. That was his calling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And God was using him.
Yeah. And
so we really started to flourish, when things were starting to make sense, that this was things that were happening, that God was with us through all difficult things that were happening in my family.
Yeah.
Those who want to hold on and embrace tragedy, and suffering and, grief and all that is one thing. Yeah. But when you have Christ in you, the hope of glory, you get to let that go.
Exactly.
He says his burden is easy and his yoke is light.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to carry all of that.
No, we're not built to carry that. That's why we stress ourselves out. We're not built to carry stress.
Exactly. And we're not made to do that.
No.
So we surrender it to him. And he helped us, through all of that. And it was not overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Still had to help. He was helping us learn and mature as we were going through, our family dynamics were really, kind of difficult, but we still were growing and we had hope.
Yeah.
Seeing my mom and her depression and stuff.
So did she snap back once she joined the church?
She got better. She started to do better.
Okay.
Then grandmother went away to California to go visit her sisters in California, and she was taking a summer vacation.
Uh-huh.
And my little sister was supposed to go with her, but she didn't go with her that summer. And my grandmother went up there, and she came back on her dying bed. She got sick with the staph. She was visiting a sister in the hospital, and she became ill and did not take care of herself. She thought she was going to go get over this, whatever was going on, whether it was the flu or something, but it was much more serious than the flu.
Wow.
It was staph infection. And so then when she wasn't getting better, she ended up getting a flight coming home earlier than she was originally planning to come home. And when my mother and my oldest brother picked her up from the airport, because she had called and said she was coming home, she was sick. They didn't realize how sick she was.
Wow.
But when she came to the airport, and she couldn't walk off that flight. She had to get a wheelchair and escorted her. The flight attendants escorted her in a wheelchair off the flight. She was the last one off that flight.
Oh, wow.
And from the airport, she went straight to the hospital.
Wow.
And my grandmother was in the hospital for maybe 2 months before she passed away. The staph infection took over her. It's like septic.
Yeah.
It killed her. The antibiotics is antibiotic resistant. And I couldn't believe it, because one of the things when my Grandma May, used to be downtown on Canal Street, we used to go window shopping at all the shops downtown New Orleans on Canal Street. And Grandma would show me some of the stores, and we'd go in the stores and look at the beautiful fabrics and the dresses in the window, and just we would have our day together window shopping. You know, staying down Canal Street, you know, back then when it was really beautiful and they had the shops to go in. And my mother worked at the Fairmont, the Roosevelt, hotel downtown. And so we would, my grandmother and I would take the bus and go downtown shopping. And she would show me, you know, places that we would go into, the department stores, and go look at beautiful things, and exposing me to, you know, things that were beautiful. Because my mom would shop, but she would shop at the thrift stores because she couldn't afford going to these, you know, department stores and stuff with 7 children, a widow with 7 children. So anyway, so that's what I learned from my grandmother. You know, that we could go window shopping. It don't cost anything to go look.
No, it doesn't.
Beautiful things on the mannequins and stuff. So I was beginning to like, you know, all of those things, the quality, the beauty, and the things that she was exposing me to as a little girl. And so one of the things my mom used to dress, and my mom took care of herself. There were moments where my mom looked so beautiful. When she'd put on her makeup and fix her hair, she had moments where she was doing great. And she would get dressed for the day. And I just looked at her as a little girl. I would look at her, wow, my mom is so beautiful. She looked like a princess. She had a nickname, Dollface.
Wow.
And I remember her putting her makeup on, her routine, how she did her makeup, her eyes, her cheeks, and her lips. She'd pat her cheeks with the lipstick, you know, and put her blush on. And she was taking care of herself. And then there was those times where she didn't take care of herself, and she was in depression. And she wasn't putting her makeup on and wasn't getting dressed for the day, and would be in her pajamas all day. And I'd be like, Mom, what's wrong? Are you sick? What's going on? I'd go to school, come back, and she would still be laying on the sofa. So those were those times where she would hit her highs and her lows in depression. But I remember that, and one of the things that I remembered was holding on to my it was an eyeball pencil, I called it. You know how some babies have a pacifier, or they have a little blanket, or a doll, comfort or security or whatever. My thing was the eyeball pencil.
The eyeball pencil?
Eyeball pencil, which is like a mascara, okay? And my mom, Aunt Gay, and my grandmother and my mom would say that I would grab onto this eye pencil and fall asleep holding it.
Wow!
And open to get that eyeball pencil out of my hand.
Eyebrow pencil.
Eyeball pencil.
Eyeball pencil.
But it was mascara, a mascara tube. And so I saw the magic when I watched my mom go put her makeup, and how the mascara and the makeup and the blush and the lipstick made her look beautiful. It enhanced her beauty. And that was when my mom was well. She would do good. I saw that she was taking care of herself. I always wanted to be like her when I grew up. Right? As a little girl. And so that, I believe, was when a fashionista was born in me. Seeing the fashion in the windows with my grandmother, exposing me to that. Also with the makeup, you know, making up, makeovers, all of that was how people felt good about themselves, right? And they just looked good and they felt good. Confidence, right? And so I saw that in my mom. But I also saw the other side in comparison. You're not well and you're not taking care of yourself. And how you let yourself go. There's something not quite right, you know, in your heart, mind, the way you think. All of that began to, I began to think about it. think upon that and why that happened to my mom.
Wow.
So, and that, brings me to like a lot of the neglect growing up. My mom would check out. And after my grandmother, who was her right hand when she was raising us when we were little, grandmother lived with us and helped take care of us.
Yeah.
But when my grandmother was gone, it was now left to my mom to take care of all her responsibility. And it was overwhelming. So my mom began to use more medication.
Wow.
And drink on top of that. And so we saw that side and the grief. She had to face the grief with my grandmother passing, which it could have been avoided. And my mom was angry because of neglect on my aunt, my mother's aunt, my mother's aunts, I believe, because it was my grandmother's sisters, great aunts, who neglected my grandmother and didn't make her go home or go to the doctor while she was there in California, till it got so bad that she had to catch a flight home and shorten her vacation.
Like, how long was she gone?
She may have been gone a month, and she was planning on being gone summer. So
she got that sick in a month?
Yes. And it was shortly after she got there, she arrived, that she went to visit her sister in the hospital. Now, it got worse, progressively worse, because she didn't do anything about it. Like, she probably went to a drugstore to get stuff over she just thought she had a flu or something. But staph infection is very serious.
Is it a cure for that?
No. All the antibiotics they tried, it was antibiotic resistant. So nothing was working.
Wow.
But they were giving her when she came home. It was too late. It had spread to the blood.
And that's the nail in the coffin.
Yes. And I didn't want to believe it. I kept saying, no, Grandma's coming home. No, they were saying, DeDe, you need to go visit Grandma. Grandma's not going to come home. Yes, she is. I kept in denial. That was my grandmother. I slept with her. She used to tell me stories at night. Three of us would be in the bed. It was like, the 3 peas in a pod. My grandmother would turn to the left and scratch my back. And then we would turn to the right and scratch Lisa's back. We all got our backs scratched.
Literally.
As children, we slept with her in the bed, and so that was my buddy. There's no way she's going to, no, she can't die. No, I didn't want to believe it.
Wow.
But it got to the point where, yes, you had to say your goodbyes. She wasn't coming home. And at that point, I was begging at her bedside, please come home, Grandma, please come home. Because I knew what kind of effect this was going to have on my mom, for one, and on our family. Because she was the
glue.
She was like the pillar that held us together as a family.
Yeah.
Without her, it's not going to work. There is no one else. Because my mom is still frail. She's not able to handle all of this at once. Now my grandmother is passing.
Yeah.
Who are we gonna have next? There's nobody. So, that happened, and she did pass. And we were all holding back the emotion at the funeral because we were told by the older siblings, do not let her see you break down. Go away. Go in the bathroom. Go somewhere when you feel that emotion.
Come over you.
Emotions or wave of emotions that come up in you, do not break down in front of Mom. That was what we were told, instructed. And so we were all dealing with the grief, and we were all trying to hold her up because we knew this one thing could take her out. We knew. And so we held back those tears and ran away and got somewhere where we were safe to let the tears flow and let it break and handle our pain and our grief when we could. So we went through that funeral, and it was very difficult, but we were there for her, and she held up pretty good because of all of us. Helped support her and not breaking down in front of her. So she surprised all of us by doing well at that funeral, but it was after the funeral. The breakdowns and the depression kicked in to a whole nother level.
Wow.
So we were then dealing with a mom who was checking out, literally out of it, to where we were raising ourselves as teenagers. We had no leadership in our home.
Wow.
And mom was disappearing at times, and she had a boyfriend through all of it.
Was that your younger sister's dad?
No, they never married. And their relationship ended, and before my grandmother's passing, their relationship ended. Okay. And so Lisa, the little sister, my baby sister, had visitation with her dad and with the family. So she spent a lot of time with her dad. And it was my twin brothers, Michael, Mitchell, and I, who were left home alone. Anyways, in the house, my mom pretty much checked out. She was drinking and she was taking medication over the limit of medication. Wow. And the medication with drinking alcohol. And I would call my older siblings and tell them they were out of the house. They had moved to Texas at this time.
Why Texas?
That's just where they wanted to live. They moved. All three of them moved.
That's where I'm from.
Are you? Yeah. They live in Houston.
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
Okay, so my two siblings, my Daniel and Sandra, live in Houston, and my other sister, oldest sister, lives in Odessa, Texas.
Okay, that's a smaller town.
Yes. And then my other brother, the oldest brother that used to check on us, he was the one who would check in to the three of us at home when my mom would disappear, and she kind of was out of the house more than in the house with her boyfriend at the time, Billy, who was also mentally not stable.
Wow.
And was also, having mental problems, so he was on medication as well. So they were together, the two of them. And he lived not far from our house where we lived. And so she would go and stay with him and leave the three of us alone, home alone. Yeah.
Go and live with him, like stay with him for days?
Yes. And just check in with us. We were self-sufficient at this point. We, could clean and we could, pretty much take care of ourselves, because we were young teenagers at the time. But nobody knew that we had no supervision. Wow. So, my two friends, remember Phyllis and Cheryl, neighborhood friends? We, this is when we were starting to get in a little trouble here because we were entertaining, different things. Yeah. And one of the things they like to do is smoke. Yeah. They were smoking cigarettes. And one day, their dad came home from work early, and we were in the shed or garage. And I was out there as well. I didn't really like smoking, but I was trying to be cool.
Yeah. And go along with the go along.
Going along with the pressure and going ahead and entertaining it and smoking in the garage with them. But I didn't really inhale it. I just puffed on it, right? Because I didn't like cigarettes. Everybody in my household smoked except for me. Wow. So I was emptying dirty ashtrays to get that smell out of the house and not the buds in the ashtrays. I did all their work, the dirty work of cleaning up after the smokers, right? Yeah. But I had secondhand smoke. I was around it. In fact, my mom even said, "Would you go light this on the stove?" Ooh. For a cigarette. I would not puff it to light it. I would just burn it until it got fire on it and then bring it to her at home. But then when I was a teenager, my friends were doing it. So then I decided, okay, well, I'm going to try it too. Yeah. Everybody else is smoking, so let me try it. Well, one day their dad came home early and we were in their garage. Well, guess what? We hurried up and realized that there was a car door that slammed, and we hurried up and ran in the house. Well, a neighbor must have called him. So he said for all of us to come inside, have a seat on the sofa, and he'll be right back. So he leaves, and he closed the door behind him, and we're all sitting on the sofa. It's like, what's going on? What's going on? Did something happen? We don't know what's going on. So we're like, okay, we have to wait. What's going on? So we're talking amongst ourselves. Well, then the door opens, and he's back. And he comes in. Well, he went to a convenience store down the street, came back, and he bought a carton of cigars.
Ooh.
And he goes into the kitchen now, and we're still sitting on the sofa waiting to see what's happening here.
He's going to teach y'all a lesson.
He goes in and he gets these containers, these plastic containers that look like buckets. And he gives Phyllis and he gives Cheryl one. And he gets them, opens up the pack of cigars. And he gives each of them a cigar. And he says, okay, he says, now, what you're going to do is you're going to smoke these cigars. And you're going to inhale it. And you're going to smoke it till it's gone or until you get sick. Either way, whichever one comes first. And he looked at me and he says, and DeDe, you get to watch them.
Oh, wow. Because you wasn't his child, so he couldn't punish you.
Exactly. And so, okay, they're like, okay, sure. You know, like, okay, we know now we got caught smoking.
Yeah.
This is punishment is, right? And they're figuring this out. So this is not the first time. He probably somebody told him that there was some smoking going on, and neighbors knew because they could hear us talking or whatever. Yeah. And he came home and he surprised us one day. So yes, I sat on the sofa and watched as my friends smoked these cigars and started to vomit.
Yes.
Brutally. It was brutal to watch as they were throwing up and they were so sick. Well, let me just say this. It was a harsh punishment.
Yes.
To witness my friends and to see that their dad, you know, tried to teach them the lesson. But only to say, in my book I share the story, but in that lesson, it backfired. Because those two ladies that were my friends then, as teenagers, are smokers to this day. And the one who does not smoke is me. So it taught me a lesson, but not the two daughters.
Okay, so that just taught them don't smoke cigars.
What's that?
That just taught them don't smoke cigars.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, we laugh about it now, but back then it was bad, and they were grounded. And so one day, I know my brother, the oldest brother, he was driving a Cadillac, and one day we got off at the bus, and they got a call. My brother got a call, my mom, from their father, and he told them that he caught us smoking in the garage, and that their girls were punished. My friends were punished, so that I could not come and hang out with them. And so we got off the bus at the bus stop, and I was talking to my two friends, which my oldest brother told me that you're not allowed to hang out with them, that they're a bad influence on me, is what he told me. That you cannot hang out with them anymore. I said, those are my friends. You can't tell me. He says, yes, I can. And I'm telling you to stay away from them. So one day I got off the bus with my two friends, and we're standing there at the bus stop talking. And the Cadillac turns the corner, the white Cadillac my brother drove. Turned and I looked, and it was him. And I said, okay, Cheryl, Phyllis, I got to go. I said, I got to get home. My brother's coming down the street. I got to go. And they took off one direction, and I went the other direction. And my brother, as he drove up by me as I'm walking home, and he's yelling at the door, when you get home, pick a switch.
Oh.
You're in trouble. And guess what they were doing at the bus stop?
What?
Smoking. So I'm there with them at the bus stop smoking.
So you was getting the whipping because they were smoking?
Yes. So he's telling me.
When he had told you to stop being with them.
Yes. And I got caught standing there with them while they were smoking. And they dropped the cigarettes and stepped on it, the evidence.
Wow.
But I saw it. And so I started walking at a brisk walk, and I was rushing to get home. And his wife was in the car too, and she said to him, she was saying, he was saying to me, get home, DeDe, and pick a switch. In other words, you're going to get a spanking.
Yeah.
Pick which you're going to get spanking. You're spanking with. Anyway, so I get home, and they jump out the car, and I run into the house. Well, his wife at the time, Donna, she's standing in front of me, so he cannot spank me, protecting me. No, Daryl, this is your sister. You don't have any right to spank her. Leave her alone, Daryl. Leave her alone. Protecting me from him.
Wow.
It's trying to teach me a lesson. Well, we don't have any supervision. So we're doing our thing. So that's my story of a story that happened in the book. I share how when you have no supervision, these things I was dealing with on my own. And how my brother, he's older than me, but he was trying to correct me.
Yeah. Because
there was no one there to do that job.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my another brother, twin brother, he was breaking into the buses. He got caught and was brought to juvenile lockup.
Oh my goodness.
And he, was in juvenile lockup. My sister got a call on my brother, Daryl, the juvenile lockup, wanted to know where was my mother, that they needed to come to the lockup to get my brother. He was picked up trespassing. So my sister flew in from Texas the next day, and my brother Daryl went to go get my brother out of juvenile lockup. And my mother from her boyfriend's house. And they come in, they walk in. And Mitchell, my brother, was locked in jail, and he called the house and to tell my mother that he was in jail. And I answered the phone. I said, Mitchell, where are you? What's going on? The jail called? He says, I need to speak to Mom. I said, she's not here. She's with Billy. And so he called her. And that's when they all came. And this was like an intervention. And so my brother and my oldest sister and my mom and Mitchell walked through the door. And my brother told everyone when he called, we're going to have a family meeting. Everybody get to the kitchen table. So we all walked into the kitchen, sat down at the table. And so we were told that Mitchell got picked up. And he was like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I didn't do anything. And my sister explained to him that you were trespassing on private property.
Yeah.
That is illegal.
Yeah.
You got picked up because you were not supposed to be on breaking into a bus.
Exactly. On private property.
And so, yes, you were doing something wrong. You broke the law.
Yeah.
And so they're telling my mom that you have to come home, Mom. These kids are going crazy right now. They have no supervision, and they need you to come home and be their mom.
Yeah.
My mother turned to my brother and told him, and we're begging my mom to come home. I'm like, Mom, come home. We need you, Mom. And my brother Michael's coming. Come on, Mom. Please come home. We don't want you to leave, Mom. We want you to come home. And my mom looked at my oldest brother, and he says, these kids are your responsibility. And my mother says, you kids are not going to tell me what to do. I am going to live my life. And when she said that to me, something broke in me. And I just said, okay, we can do this. We're already doing it anyway.
Exactly.
She makes sure we have food. She has Social Security from my father as a widow pension. She will pay the bills as long as we can have a place to live. If not, we're going to go to foster care.
Yeah.
And I said, we can do this. Mitchell, Michael, that's okay. Mom doesn't have to come home. We can do this. And from that point on, we were doing it. So no one had to know that we were there by ourselves until,
wow,
we could pretty much be on our own as children raising ourselves, because she was not well. And my little sister would go and visit at Billy's house, her boyfriend's house, because he had a daughter, my sister, the little sister's age.
Okay.
They were more like sisters than me and my little sister.
Okay.
That was where she spent a lot of time when she visited my mom, and she would go visit with her dad. So Lisa had a father and a mother.
Wow.
None of us did. None of us had our fathers. And then we didn't have our mom when she lived with Billy. But no one knew that. We were in the house by ourselves.
Did that cause any, with her having both parents and you guys not having your parents, even though they had parents, I'm assuming their fathers were still living? They just were divorced?
They were, and they had very difficult divorces.
Okay.
And my mom's second husband was abusive.
Okay.
He lived in Louisiana, but he remarried, and he had an affair when she was pregnant with the second child.
Okay.
And married the woman he had the affair with.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he was an alcoholic, and he beat her, so she had no relations with him, and he didn't want any relationships with his sons. Until they had a little bit of a relationship, but not much. Wow. And the older siblings, two sisters, had a father. He was in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. He married to get out of her home from my grandparents' house. They were very strict. And so she ended up marrying a military man, and he was very strict and very mean to her. And she really didn't marry for love. She married him to get out of the home.
For stability.
Yes. So that's why when she met my father, she was head over heels in love with him because she truly loved the man. Yeah. And they were attracted to each other instantly and fell in love. And then he was taken from her. So she was dealing with, her issues with God for blessing her with such a wonderful husband. Yeah. And then he suddenly was gone.
Wow.
So my mom dealt with a lot of unforgiveness and, grief.
Yeah.
And darkness. That was just a part of her life that she couldn't get past. She let the past be the present, most of the time. Yeah. So she couldn't move forward. And she was on medication, so that held her back.
Yeah.
So that was part of our, unfortunate situation where she didn't lean on the Lord more. She was leaning on her depression and the medication to get her through cope with life. So we, were there in the house, and there's stories of things that have happened.
Save it for the book. They have to read.
I'm saving it for the book, and there are incredible testimonies how God saved us from, a lot of serious things that happened.
Okay. And
I will move forward, a little bit, and talk about my first love. Okay. When I met Mark, I was 15. I was riding my bike to the lakefront and throwing the frisbee out there and riding the bike and, trying to enjoy time, outside and enjoying my life. And so I did things that were outdoors and fun and exciting for me as a teenager. Yeah. And riding to the lake, it was freedom out there, enjoying riding my bike. And I happened to bump into Mark, who was out there at the lake, who was an older guy. I didn't know at the time how much older he was, but he started to show up where we would play frisbee, and a group of us. And then he wanted to join us in our game, and he started to show attention to me and that he liked me and was, basically just saying how pretty I was and that he wanted to get to know me better. And I, going through middle school, elementary, I didn't have any interest in any boys. Mm-hmm. I was going to school. I had enough, stuff going on at home, and I stayed away. There wasn't really a lot of mature boys my own age. Yeah. So it wasn't an interest at the time. Yeah. Now I'm getting older, and I'm 14 and 15 years, older, and starting to have an eye for,
starting to see things a little different.
Yes.
Because of those hormones.
Exactly. Kicking in. Exactly. And he just caught my eye. But I didn't know him. He was a stranger. So I just kind of played it cool, because I'm a young girl and I don't really know never known anybody, a guy. the opposite sex kind of thing. And so I was just being nice, right? And so he moved in a little closer to us and got involved in playing the game and stuff. And then he started talking to me about, you know, my family and, you know, what is my name and all these personal questions. And so I was, you know, just out there talking to him and stuff. And so we would meet out there. Got to where I was riding out there looking forward to seeing him.
Wow.
Like, wow, I really am taking
You fell for the okie doke.
What's that?
You fell for the okie doke.
Yeah, he was just kind of a nice guy and good looking. He looked like Tom Cruise.
Tom Selleck?
Tom Selleck, like the Magnum
P.I.
He had a mustache and he had lots of hair and he was Italian. And he, you know, was also a bodybuilder.
Oh, wow.
But he worked out and he was at the lakefront as a lifeguard out there where they had the beach area.
Oh, okay.
And so I saw him out there as well. He used to go out there, and there were kids in the water and stuff, and swimming and all that. So I began to go over there and play frisbee and see him. And so we started talking, and then he decided. Well, one day it was raining, and I rode my bike, and he offered me a ride home because of the rain. And I was kind of hesitant because I didn't really know him outside of the meeting him out there, right? Lakefront. So I didn't know whether or not I should let him know where I live and give me a ride home.
Yeah.
But something in my gut said, okay, you know, let's do this. And so I said, okay. At that time, I was thinking in the car as we were driving home to my house, what if this guy takes me off somewhere, you know, or doesn't bring me home? You know, I'm trusting him. I'm not really, you know.
Don't really know him.
Here, I don't know what could happen here. I was hoping and praying to God that I could make it home safely. And he brought me home, and I was safe. You know, that wasn't an issue. But then he asked me out, and he was interested in me and told me he was interested in seeing me again. And so we started to see one another. Now, turns out he was 7 years older. I was 15 and he was 22.
Wow.
So my mom didn't know this. My brothers knew that I was seeing someone, and I didn't, you know, tell them his age, but that I liked him and that he was a good guy, you know, that I had met. And so anyway, so I started to bring him around, and he introduced me to going out to dinner, and then, you know, this was Saturday Night Fever. This was like going out to clubbing, dancing, partner dancing, and watching Saturday Night Fever, and, you know, all that was going on back then. What is that, the 80s? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I have never experienced anything like this. Is fun. Like, this is fun. I'm dressed up. I looked older than my age.
Yeah.
I was never carded with him.
Really?
And he was introducing me this. I'm like in 9th grade. I'm like getting ready to go in high school. And he's introducing me to the clubs, which I had no idea how much fun it was back then. And so all the stuff, the sadness and all the stuff that I was going through at home, that I finally got to have some fun. You were
able to get away from it.
Yes. And he was like my knight in shining armor.
Yeah.
You know, that he has arrived. You know, it's like, oh, I'm so excited about this. That it made my heart smile. Like, okay, that things are looking good here, you know, for me. But I didn't know going back, you know, like going out with someone much older than me, the pressures of that. Yeah. Like, hey, I'm going ahead of myself. Like, I should be in high school enjoying my life and graduating and proms and all this stuff. I invited him to a dance. And I share about that story, how embarrassed, like he was like this older guy going out with a kid. Yeah, and all the kids my age looked so young, and that I brought him to a dance. And in my middle school years, I was voted most best dressed girl in middle school. I did pep squad and dance team and marching in the parades and all of that. And then I meet this knight in shining armor who's now elevated me to going out to clubs. I mean, I'm like maturing beyond my years.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. You know, I'm going full range, you know, with having no restrictions here. Unlimited possibilities out there that I'm not even aware of what doors it's opening up to me.
Yeah.
Right?
And some of them doors shouldn't be open beforehand.
And exactly. So we start really falling for each other. We really like start talking about love and how he's professing his love for me. DeDe, you know, when two people love each other, you know, we are to give each other, you know, like talking about introducing me to being intimate with him. And I'm a virgin. You know, I was molested as a child, but I was a virgin.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, wait a second, is he really talking about what I think he's talking about? Like, this is the next step.
Yeah.
Because we're dating and everything.
With the older guy, of course, that's the next step.
Of course, he's got that on his mind.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, he's trying to talk me into this, and I am like, look, I am a virgin. I'm a young girl here. You're much older than me. I'm trying to talk him out of it, but he's set on it. In fact, when I started saying, I don't think I'm ready for this next step, he was like, well, you know, maybe we should be dating other people.
Yeah.
Because he wanted it exclusive at first.
Yeah.
With me. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't really want him to date other people. I really am falling for him. This is my first love.
Yeah.
And when you fall in love for the first time, I don't
Tell
care what
me about it.
Says, it is intense.
It
love.
is.
And my heart was like, I was so passionate about somebody loving me.
Yeah.
Right? And showing me love.
Yeah.
And showing me around and proud of me when I dressed up, flattering me, telling me how beautiful I am, hearing all those sweet things was touching my heart, and I was melting. And I felt that I was melting.
Yeah. And
I was scared to let my guard down because I, you know, hadn't been able to trust anybody. What happened as a child, I'm like, I'm not interested in any boys, you know, staying far away from them after what I've been through. You know, I don't trust them. And here's a man that is older than me, more experienced in love and romance. He's romancing me.
Yeah.
And I'm falling for it, right?
Yeah.
Because head over heels falling for him. And how do you put the brakes on that? It's like, I feel these things in my body. I feel these things in my mind and in my heart. But Lord, am I ready for this next step?
Yeah.
You know, so I start thinking about God. You know, and he's telling me when two people fall in love, God wants us to be together. He knew I was a Christian too.
Yeah. So he used that against you.
Yeah. He's saying God's okay with us.
Yeah.
Being intimate because we love each other. Okay. So then we actually do spend time together, and I, you know, was with him and loved him intimately and gave him all of me.
Wow.
And I shared with him that is something that he said it was sacred. And thanked me for trusting him and loving him that much.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we were together that way, and nobody knew. I didn't share that with family. I didn't even share that with my friends, my girlfriends and stuff. That was a secret between us.
Yeah.
Until one day, we went out and we came back late, and I let him stay the night at my house. He lived in Chalmette, which is a long ways from Metairie. It's a 40-minute drive, and it was like 1-2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, Mom happened to be home that night. Spent the night in her room. And my baby sister and I were in the bed, in our bedroom. And I let Mark sleep next to us in my room at the foot of the bed. While that night, I didn't want him to drive home. It was late, and so he spent the night. Well, the next morning I woke up early, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was still asleep in the house. I went to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw him laying there, and I went and made the mistake of laying next to him. Mm-hmm. One thing led to another with hugs. We were spooning each other, and one thing led to the next. Next thing I know, he's on top of me.
Wow.
And I am in my house now, and my baby sister is asleep in the bed. She woke up, and next thing I know, I hear the padding on her footsteps on the floor, running hardwood floors, running out of the room. And before we knew it, she went and told my mom that Mark was there on top of me and that I was struggling to breathe.
Wow.
And so, yes. And so my mother swings the door open when we got up, when we heard my sister's footsteps. We jumped up and got up, and she didn't even know Mark was there. And she came in the room. What are you doing? And asked him to leave. Mm-hmm. And yelled at me, what are you doing? And she, he left. Mm-hmm. And she was saying to me, well, what are you doing? You're acting like a little whore.
Wow.
Because I was disrespecting the house.
Yeah.
With him. And so I said to her, well, what are you talking about? My mom was I knew this, and I didn't share this, but it's in the book. She was having an affair with a married man. And told me not to come home when she entertained him. Whoa. I didn't tell you before, but that was happening as well during my teenage years. So when she came in the room with Mark and I getting caught there, I said to her, well, you calling your daughter, me, a whore? Well, what about you sleeping with that man?
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. And guess what? She turned around. I saw in her eyes.
And slapped you.
No. She ran into the kitchen, and she was looking for something. And I ran after her, and when I saw what object she picked up was a knife, one of the largest cutting knives in the kitchen.
Been there, done that.
The first thing that came to her, she grabbed it and ran after me.
Wow.
And as I slammed the my bedroom door, my mother raised her hand and started stabbing the door. When I talked to my mom at that point, the rage that I saw in her eyes turned black. When they say you can get insane for one moment?
Yeah.
When the anger hits you all at once?
Yep.
And there's a rage that comes out?
Yep.
If she would have gotten to me, she probably would have stabbed me to death. Mm-hmm. I was fearful for my life at that point.
Yeah.
And she told me, go with him, get out.
Wow.
Meaning I have to leave her house. And back then they didn't have cell phones, so I had to wait behind that locked door
till he got home.
Get home, so I could call him to tell him to come back and get me, that I have to leave. My mom almost killed me. Please come home, come back to me, come and get me. I have to leave. And my life depends on it. And so he did. He came back. And I packed, which I thought would be for a week or two. Mm-hmm. Ended up being 2 years. I didn't see mom or my family for 2 years. So when I talk about school, well, we'll tell you this. Another thing that happened was right before I got caught with him and got kicked out of the house, I went to Mark as we were having sex together, and we were in love. I got pregnant for him.
Wow.
And it was a teenage pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Still in school. And when I went to Mark and I told him, remember how you said you loved me? You remember how you wanted me and you wanted to start a life with me?
Yeah.
I said, well, Mark, we're expecting. We're going to have a baby.
And what did he say?
And the thing that he said to me was, what are you going to do about it?
Oh, wow.
I was crushed, brokenhearted, devastated. What am I going to do about it? Was what I heard. Instead of, oh, DeDe, I love you so much, and I love this baby, which is what I wanted to hear him say, was not what he said. And so I was crushed. And so we talked about what we were going to do about it. And that day came that I had to make a decision. And I chose to abort that baby.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do about it was rejection.
Yes.
For me and the baby.
Yeah.
In my household, I could not bring a baby back home.
Yeah.
And this man was not showing love to me at that time. And so the day came when I had to go to the clinic and abort our child. And he dropped me off at the door and came back for me later.
Wow. He didn't even wait in the waiting room.
No. He didn't want to be seen there because he knew it was wrong. And what he had done, and he told me this, that he had got someone else pregnant before my relationship with him, and she aborted the baby as well. And that it's okay to abort the baby. You're going to be okay. Which is a lie.
Exactly, because nobody gets over an abortion.
No.
I've had a couple of them, unfortunately.
And so, with that, I had to face going through that.
Alone.
Best to tell me how much he loved me, but he didn't love me and the baby.
Yeah.
That time came. And I took it as rejection.
Yeah.
And hurt, beyond anything I had ever experienced before. And when I went into the clinic, this is your life, this is your body, you can do whatever you want to do. What is your decision? It's your decision to make, is what they said. It's just a fetus, it's just tissue right now. And
that's not true. The
it's
moment
lies. It is lies. We know that. I know that now.
Yes.
15, 16 years old, I don't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. But I didn't do anything, to protect myself. I mean, we used some measure of, because he kept talking to me about the pill. So we had that conversation about the pill. What pill? I was like, pill.
Yeah.
That's how green I was about relationships and sex and everything. Know what he was talking about. He had to talk to me about it. And I wasn't consistent with taking the pill. Yeah. So I got pregnant, and then that abortion was not a quick fix. So, from the pit of hell. Yeah. And that affected our relationship tremendously. Yeah. Our relationship suffered. And so that happened before I was kicked out of my mom's house. I just wanted to say that was heavy on my heart. Oh, so
the abortion happened before you was kicked out?
Right before I got kicked out. Right before I was asked to leave. It happened. Wow. And while I was healing from that, there was anger in me for the disappointment, for what I did. And so I reacted to my mom, which I normally wouldn't have said anything, but I responded to her because I was exposed to a lot with her, and I let her have it at that point. And I didn't, and I regretted it after I said it.
Yeah.
Because even though it's true, I still should not have disrespected her that way, because I'd already disrespected her with having sex with him in her house.
Yeah.
While she's home. And so all of that was wrong. No matter what, it was wrong.
Yeah.
But it was in the moment, and it happened. And so my family, my siblings thought I ran away with Mark, but I was told to get out so that she didn't tell everybody the truth of what really happened.
Wow.
I disrespected her, and she didn't want to see me again in that house until, she got over it. And
wow.
She forgave me. But at that point in time, I had to go. My life depended upon it. And so I packed. I thought, I'd be gone for a week or two. I was gone for 2 years. And during that time, my mom had Dallas palsy. She had a lot of issues with her health.
Mm-hmm.
She was grieving the relationship and what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Along with me, I was sick, with the baby,
yeah.
And the abortion and fighting with Mark. Well, anyways, to make a long story short, because you have to read the book to get all the details and stories, but it's pretty heavy stories. But Mark and I were scuba divers. We rode, we did racing with these funny cars. He showed me a lot of things about life while I was gone those 2 years.
Uh-huh.
We got certified together. We shot guns on the levee. We went trawling and fishing and crabbing and all that kind of stuff, because it was in Chalmette and they had a boat, so we had crawfish boils and just enjoying life and going out dancing and acting like a grown-up, right? Because I was then a grown-up, So I was doing things a lot earlier than most adults would have been. Yeah. And I was also, I forgot this, I was also modeling. I had a job working in a deli while I was in school, and then I started modeling because I didn't want to wear the clothes that my mom was buying when I was home from the thrift store. So I started modeling for the malls to get clothes. And
so that's how you were voted best dressed in middle school.
Exactly. So I did work, and I was able to be independent enough to say, okay, well, I'm out of the house now. I can take care of myself.
Yeah.
Now, I did have to finish school because I was in Chalmette. I wasn't able to finish high school. And so I ended up getting my GED and moved on and went to take some college courses in fashion merchandising and also marketing at UNO for while I was working and going to school. And it began to be a bit much. So I didn't finish college and get my degree, but I ended up going into retail and working in fashion. And I loved it. And I was independent, and I was modeling, and I was working at the convention center. And so all of that to say, I began to work in retail. And Mark and I, there was an event, I want to say a situation that happened, and I call it in the book, The Rock Story, of going to Panama City, Florida, and getting caught. I got caught in the undertow going into scuba diving this week in Florida, and I went and bent down to put on my fins. Everybody was on the rocks, all the instructors. The day where it was overcast and the currents and the visibility was like an inch in front of your face, and we were asking, what is everybody doing on the rocks? Why isn't everybody in the water? And they were saying that the undertow is too swift right now, it's too dangerous. And so Mark and his friend Jerry and I, he's like, we came all the way from Louisiana, we're going in. So he's handing me my fins and my mask and saying, let's go, we're getting in the water. And so I began to see Mark, these things where he's telling me, okay, we're getting in the water, when all these experienced divers are sitting on the rocks and nobody's in the water.
Yeah.
And I see
but you know more than they do.
Yeah, right. And so we're standing in waist-deep water. And as I bend down to put my fin on, the undertow came up and took me out to sea.
Wow.
So I'm doing backflips underwater in the jetties, and I'm hitting the rocks.
Ooh.
I'm flipping underwater. Now my tank's on my back. I barely got my fins on. I have jeans on, a bodysuit that's long sleeve, but it's a bodysuit, not an all-in-one, but a bodysuit and I had gloves on. I barely got my mask on and my mouthpiece in my mouth while I'm doing these flips.
Wow.
And I'm realizing I'm gonna die. Something has happened here.
Yeah.
And I need to grab on to these rocks that I keep hitting because it's going to hit the tank. One time, I'm thinking the next time I'm going to hit, it may be the tank blowing up, blowing me up. So I got to grab onto something.
Yeah.
And I grab onto the rock.
Wow.
And I'm holding on for dear life as I go from one rock to the next rock. It wasn't holding me. The currents were so strong. It was pulling me off the rocks. And now to the point where jeans were threads. My gloves were torn off my hands. There were sea urchins that were lodged in my skin, through my arms, my torso, and my legs as I wrapped my body around each rock and holding on for dear life. And the stinging that I felt throughout my body from the sea urchins sticking me, because they have like spine-like needles.
Yeah.
And so I'm grabbing on, I'm holding on, I'm praying, oh God, I don't want to die out here. I got to talk to my mom. I don't want my mom to know that I'm going to, drowning out here. Please, Lord, help me. Help me, Lord. I'm crying out to him underwater. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Don't let me die. And so as I am underwater and I was gone for a good 20, 30 minutes underwater, if I let go of the rock, I'm gone. I knew that.
Wow.
I had no strength to fight the currents. They were strong. And holding on to the rock was my foundation. God is my rock.
Whoa.
So I know he was holding me.
Yep.
Okay? And so I am praying as I'm out there, Lord, please don't let me die. Please, Lord. And I'm thinking about my mom, and I'm thinking about my family and how I left. Lord, please give me the opportunity to talk to my mom again. Please, Lord. All I could think about. Help me, Lord. Forgive me, Lord. All of these things that I have done. I'm disobedient to my mom. I had the abortion, Lord. Help me, Jesus. Forgive me, Lord. I'm crying out to him. And I said, as I'm saying those things, I see this big object coming towards me. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God, no, it's not going to be the current. It's like, I'm going to get eaten by a shark. Oh my God, it's a shark. I'm thinking to myself. And I see this object coming towards me. And as it's coming, it's getting closer and closer. Now, you got to remember, the visibility is only an inch in front of me, but I see darkness coming towards me.
Yeah.
Like a cloud in the water. And the water was dark to begin with and cold down there by myself. And I'm looking, and as it's getting closer and closer to me, I'm like, oh God, please don't let this shark eat me out here. And God sent a rescue because that object was Mark and Jerry.
Wow.
Who found me in the jetty. This is a miracle. Who found me in the jetty holding on to the rock. What are the odds of that ever happening?
Exactly. Who was Jerry?
It's a miracle from God. When I started praying and asking God, please help me. He rescued me and sent them to me to find me. And as they found me there on the rock, which I was terrified to let go, okay, because I knew my oxygen was getting low. I was running out of air, but I had to let go. I had to trust God.
Yeah.
That sent them to find me.
Yeah.
And so they grabbed my hands. Now, these guys were like 280 pounds each, builders, right? And they were not letting go. But what was happening was Jerry kept rising up in the current, and so he was getting worn out, and so he gave me weights from his waist, and he said, I have to let, sign language, I have to let go and go up, because I can't fight holding you and, swimming.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you go. But we needed to go lower than the current, go underneath. So that meant we had to go to the bottom.
Yeah. Wow.
And swim underneath the current. And that's where we were able to, plus the weights that he gave me weighed me down because I was light as a feather in the water.
Yeah.
How powerful that water was. So I was down on the ground. I could see the flounders underneath the sand on the beach, the water. So I knew, okay, we're underneath this, but we got to get up there. We got to go up because I know I got to be out of air soon, right? All the air, get that air up when I was terrified. And I was down for quite a while. So we arrowed up, we're going up. And we had to be careful because it is a jetty and there are boats that come out and you don't want to get hit by a motor.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful as you're going up to the surface that no one's going to hit you as you surface. And as I surfaced and Mark surfaced up at the top, and there were like jellyfish and all that. I didn't care about the seaweed and all that stuff out of the water, but that God saved my life, and He sent the rescue.
Yeah.
To rescue me that day, and He was my rock that I held on to and prayed to, and He answered the prayer, and I knew that it was God. Yeah. Only God could do something like that.
Exactly. When it's something that's unbelievable, that's a but God moment.
That's right. It's what is
but
impossible.
God.
God has made it possible.
Exactly. Because like I say.
And I thank you, Jesus, because that is a story that I can share today.
Yes.
That I lived through it to tell that story.
And you know what? That brought tears to my eyes when you read that in our writing group.
Yes, it brought me back there. When
yes.
I read it, that was my first time reading what I wrote.
And I was sitting there with chill bumps on my arm. I was like, oh my God. I could feel the emotion when you was reading the story. Because we share stories in our writing group. And one lady, she writes poetry, Ingrid. And the rest of us just bring stories of stuff we've written. And I've had poetry that I've read before too. But when you were reading that day, I was like, oh my God. That is definitely a but God moment.
Yes. And it brought me there with reading the story. Now, there's a lot more details that I skipped through because I'm trying to summarize the story. But in all honesty, like to go there in the depths that I went there to tell the story is a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And God, but God.
But God.
He was my rescuer.
Yes.
And there is no way possible that could happen without God.
No. He was all over. His handprints was all over. If this was a crime scene, he'd be arrested because his fingerprints would be over everything.
And I just thank you, thank God that I'm able to share that He is my rock.
Yes.
And my
He's everybody's rock. He's everybody's deliverer.
Strength in whom I will trust.
Exactly. At all times.
My horn of salvation and my stronghold.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what He did for me. And I just wanted, to share that story because that's something that I've held on to. Yeah. That I know that He loves me.
Exactly.
That He would rescue me.
Exactly.
In my time of need.
That He thought enough of you.
He can do it for others as well.
And listen, look how many times He saved you out of stuff.
Exactly. It's just over and over and over.
Chosen.
Yes.
You're here for a reason.
We live through these situations or circumstances.
Yes.
So that we can share.
Exactly. That's what this platform is all about. Sharing.
How great He is.
Yeah.
When He does answer prayer, sometimes we think when we pray that our prayers aren't being answered.
Yeah.
Now, that was miraculous
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
Because he knew
that's what you needed.
I needed at that moment.
God gives you what you need, not what you want. He's not Santa Claus.
That's right.
Santa brings you what you want. God gives you what you need.
Absolutely. And I had a repentant heart.
Mm-hmm.
You remember, I was saying to him, Lord, I want to talk to my mom. I want to be forgiven.
Yeah.
What I said to her.
Yeah.
Lord, I want you to forgive me for what I have done.
Yeah.
All of those things.
Yeah.
That I had to, ask him to forgive me for. In that moment, it was all coming to my mind and my heart to say those things so that God could answer my prayer when I needed it most.
Yeah.
And he answered it. He was there with me on that rock.
Mm-hmm.
He was the rock that I was holding on.
Exactly. He was the rock.
Yes. So that was stories, and that was the grace of God that I lived through that to tell that story.
Yes,
there are others in the book that I will share as well, but that was one I shared at the Southern Christian Writers Guild Day, and that was my first time reading it, what I wrote.
Yeah.
And the emotion behind it, I was on that rock that day, having that story told.
Yeah.
I was experiencing it all over again.
Yeah. And I could feel that. Being there in the room, hearing her read that story, it was, mind blowing. It was like, what? God is an on-time God.
Yes, he is.
All the time.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I was going to say, with Mark and I, the relationship, I felt at that time, I saw that he didn't love me and protect me harm's way that day.
Yeah.
So it began to change in my heart towards him. I looked at him differently.
So wait, Jerry was a friend?
Yes.
He was Mark's friend?
Yes.
And that's who saved you?
Well, they both were there. Both Mark and Jerry came.
Who was in the water?
Both of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they both came looking for me. That's why I said they both found me.
Okay.
That big object was them.
Wow.
They were going through the rocks looking for me.
Wow.
So, and that's why I say it's a miracle to find me, because the jetties are full of rocks.
Yes.
All throughout that canal.
Yes.
And it's both sides.
Yeah.
And they found me right there on the rock.
But God.
But I saw him differently after that. I could not look upon him the same.
Wow.
And that's God, because even though he rescued me off that rock, God used him. Something in me, I think, when I aborted our child, that changed towards him.
Yeah. That's big.
It is. It's deep.
And for a guy to be that nonchalant, like, okay, what you gonna do about it? It's like as if he didn't have any participation in the act.
Right. And those words were very
hurtful.
Yes.
For you to say them, I was insulted. I'm like, what do you mean what I'm gonna do about our child? It takes two people to make a baby. Not one. Right. Why this gotta be on me? Since you didn't intend to get me pregnant. I didn't get myself pregnant.
Right. But I looked at it as rejection, unloved.
Girl, you dodged a huge bullet.
And the thing I had to realize is that, yes, we are together when we conceive this child. And there's so many things that I want to share. I can't say everything right now because of it being in the book.
Yeah.
So I can only touch on these things.
Okay. But no. They need to get the book.
Yeah, definitely. There's so much more.
Yes.
And there is a story of redemption for us in the book as well. And I will say that the relationship continued for a little while longer, but something else happened that ended our relationship, and it was